that thing inside dads that is just like, you love your kids so much.
Yeah.
You want their life to be easy. You want them to be safe. You want them to be loved. You want all of these things for them because we're looking back at our life and how difficult our life was and how hard things were for us. And we want to save them from those experiences so that they have an easier go of it. We want them to be able to navigate life in such a way where they don't have to go through some of the things that we've had to go through. What are we talking about today? Do you have any ideas?
I mean, we talked about happiness last time. We could talk about sadness.
That's a great plan.
Or
buckle up. We're just going to go straight fucking sorrow today.
Right. No. I don't know. I love like the happiness stuff, right? We could talk about things that upset us. Right? Kind of the opposite.
Okay.
A little yin and yang on that. But then I also was like, as I was driving here, I was thinking about that. I was like, do I really want to sit around and talk about all the things that upset me?
That piss you off, right?
Yeah, right. And then like, I've got some important meetings today. Just be super for all of the meetings. Get on like, what's our problem?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that would probably not be maybe the best way to start my day.
What do you do with anger? That's a good question, right? What do you do with anger?
Oh, that's a good way to think about it.
Start to feel it and process it. Steph and I had a situation last week that brought up a ton of anger inside of me.
Yeah.
And it was this really cool moment. It's probably something I should have talked to her about before I bring it up on the podcast, but that's okay.
What you should do is, because of the power of editing.
Well, you know what? It was actually a friend of mine. A friend of mine talked to me about this situation that he had with his wife. I think her name was something like...
Smethany,
right? That'll give it away. No, it's S. Salazar. No, wait, that's too close.
It was Daphne,
right? Daphne.
There you go. It's got some.
A friend of mine, Greg and Daphne, they were they were having some issues. No, what it was we just had an argument. We had a disagreement. It was a situation that I don't need to go into, but it was one of those where we were both upset at each other.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's what it boiled down to, right?
Yeah.
We were just both upset at each other.
Yeah.
But it was more than just kind of like the level one upset with one another where you can kind of like still be around each other. It was that we can't be in space with each other right now. We were really pissed off at each other. And we both were feeling that. And it was the type of thing, too, that it happened in the evening. So it set up...
for the
bedtime and everything just was show, and we both were feeling it in the morning when we woke up again. And it took about until, I don't know, later on in the afternoon. So it was, it was a good 18 hours of processing between sleep and everything like that for both of us to get to the spot where we were able to kind of come back together and have a conversation about it.
Wow.
And what I realized along the way was this really, because I couldn't understand why I was feeling angry. Like I understood why Stephanie was getting triggered and why she was getting upset. I'm sorry, Daphne. Sorry, Steph. I know that. I mean, you know Greg and Daphne, right? Yeah. We constantly get confused with them, right?
The alter ego.
Yeah, those guys.
The Greg and Daph show.
Yeah. It's a great podcast. But it took me a while to figure out why I was upset, because I was confused. I was like, very clearly I was feeling immense emotions. It was like I was angry and I was upset. And I've learned over the years in our relationship that if I'm feeling that type of anger inside of me, like the type of anger where I'm just like, because as soon as it starts percolating, it's the whole thing where you're like, well, son of a bitch, if you think this is going to be the case, then I'm going to show you what I think. And oh, you think, okay, well, I think, right? Yeah. That's my thought process.
I'm going to say this.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've learned to not say those things anymore, right?
Greg learned.
I taught Greg a lot.
Yeah.
I told Greg, I'm like, Greg, you can't say those things anymore. You got to keep those things inside and talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of processing and getting through all of that initial wave of like, well, this. And then that eventually led me into like, what am I really feeling? And anytime I'm feeling that intense of anger, the majority of the time it's defensive. It's I'm protecting myself, right? It's some sort of fight or flight that comes out, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to fight and defend myself. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense given the circumstances of what took place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it took me all the way back to childhood, and it took me back to the process of feeling like I was responsible for making things better when it wasn't my fault. And so it was one of those things where I had to really sit in that for a little while and connect to some experiences from childhood that I could remember, as well as just like that has played out over and over and over again in my life, in Greg's life, in so many different ways. And so it was one of those moments where I was able to do a bunch of processing and kind of get to the root of what all of my anger was stemming from.
Yeah.
And Steph did the exact same thing on her side, where she sat with it, felt it, processed it, understood it. And then we finally come back together and have a conversation about it, where we're able to listen to each other, process it. Like, it's totally the thing where we just sit there and like, you go first, and I'm listening, and I'm listening, and I'm listening, and I'm listening, and I'm listening. And it's like, once they're finally finished, do you feel complete?
Yeah.
Do you need me to reiterate anything? I want to make sure you're fully heard and understood. And then I go, and then we just have this really beautiful conversation about it. But it was so fascinating to me because it was, I mean, I've done it a handful of times in our relationship. Anger is one of those things that I've done a lot of work around when it comes to processing and kind of unpacking and understanding. But this was like a new one. This was a new level of it that I hadn't ever really kind of sat in to get to the core of like what was sparking that thing. And it was also an interesting moment for us where after all of it was kind of said and done and we got a chance to talk through it, the thing that really stood out to me was there was plenty of times in our relationship, and we've had it on both ends of the spectrum, where sometimes it's me and sometimes it's her, but we get upset at the other person, and then we try to like fix it with that person before we've had the opportunity to go through that whole calm regulation, settle your nervous system, think rationally, right?
Yeah.
And that repair process in the moment when we're still activated just creates more chaos. It's like impossible to try to come back together and fix anything. And it's got to be way after the fact. So it was like the awareness of, we can't fix the problem with the person that created the problem. And it's not like either of us really created the problem, right? But it's like when one of us gets really triggered by the other person, that person isn't then expected to like show up and help fix the problem. You've got to figure out how to do that on your end, not fix the problem, but regulate your nervous system, calm yourself.
Be rational.
Yeah. And then
It's really easy for me. I look at my wife and I'm like, just be rational.
I'm so glad you said that. Now I don't have to worry about anything I've said in this episode. Because you're
I am just kidding.
I at least put it off on Greg and Daphne over here. You're like, I just tell my wife to relax.
Look at her like, listen, you should calm down.
That's super helpful. Fellas, hey, you know, if you're new in a relationship, that's great advice. Women absolutely love to be told to calm down. It's one of the best things that I've ever done. Saved my marriage multiple times. Just tell them to relax.
Which one? Listen, let's calm down. It's rational. Let's be rational about this.
Yeah, it was an interesting moment for us, and it was just the reiteration of a lot of stuff that we knew, but at the same time, it's like sometimes having those experiences occur in like real time and live action and trying to really navigate it.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It's super hard.
Yeah.
And when like that trigger gets pushed and you go from like 0 to 100, and you're just like, man.
And sometimes it's like when you start this, right, this anger and there's this triggering moment, even separating, that's not the end of the build of the anger, because and for me, I feel like, you know, okay, this has upset me. And if I step away from it, or if I'm like, you know, it's just, let's take a moment here or whatever, I walk away and I'm internally going, and and I can feel my anger climbing
Right.
because now this is my, like, before that, you know, if you rewind, you know, 10 minutes, you're just going through your day and all of a sudden you're like, and I'm triggered. And that is starting this cascade, this almost avalanche of emotions and feeling, because now 100% of my thought process is based around this, and I'm building and I'm pulling in other things and I'm digging and I'm like, and 3 months ago you didn't make my side, you know, and just all this stuff that comes in. And then you get to this, like, is the right word crescendo?
I knew you were going to say crescendo.
See, like, get to the top of this. I'm just trying to expand my vocabulary, right? That's all it is. That way my wife thinks I'm not a stupid, super fucking idiot. So you get to this, you know, this pinnacle of anger and just, and then you have to be like, what the fuck? Right? And then it's like, all right, is this really where I want to be? You know, that's how I tend to look at anger. Now, I will say that I'm probably not the best person to describe how I handle these things. My wife would be a lot better because she's a lot more rational than I am. But I tend to, like, I get angry about things, and then I have to, like, it helps if I talk through them with her. It helps if I, you know, start to, like, process, and I'll be like, all right, like, why am I feeling this way? Like, is this the big deal that I'm making it? Do I need to sit here and think about all this stuff? Is there anything, can I affect this? Is there anything, like, it'd be like, as an example, that's not a good, I'm mad, I'm upset that the Lions got knocked out in the divisional rounds. They were number 1 seed, the best fucking team, and they got knocked out. They had a bad fucking game. I can be upset about that. I can be mad about that. I can be angry. I have nothing to do with that. I am an observer 100% of the way. There's no way for me to affect that whatsoever. So I have to real quick, like, think about these things as, like, is this anger doing anything? Or am I just being angry to be angry?
Yeah.
Is it the rocking chair of anger? It's giving me something to do, but it's not getting me anywhere, right? So I have to think about that real quick. And then I'm like, all right, is all of this anger and upsetness worth whatever it was that created this, right? And a lot of times, like, I find that it's one of those, like, Jamie and I will both be stressed, elevated, like we're moving around, we're going through, we're trying to get things done, you know, like our morning routines sometimes, or the evening routines, or whatever it is, like with the kids. We both have a full work day that we either have ahead of us or behind us that we're still running through, right? Because that's the downside of working from home for both of us.
It's hard to put down.
It's really hard to put down. There's no, like, if you work in an office, like when you're the drive home or the whatever, right? So that's a lot harder for us being working from home. So you carry this around with you more because it's not uncommon. Like, I'll come upstairs, you know, if the kids get home at 3:30, I'll come upstairs, say hey to the kids, you know, like, all right, cool. Hey, let's get chores going. And Jamie might come out from her office and we'll hang out for a second. And I was like, all right, she's like, hey, I got a meeting. I was like, yeah, I've got 2 more things I got to wrap up. And we'll both go back to our offices. And then we come back. So it's like, we see each other throughout the day. The kids, we have to continuously interact, but we can always go right back into the work mode.
Yeah.
So we're not even all the way out. And a lot of times, like, so we'll have all this stuff that we're processing from our day, and then the kid will do something stupid, you know, or like something happens, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, Lincoln might do something and Jamie will tell him something and then he talks back, and now I'm mad at him because he's talking back. Plus I've got this day, and she's like, hey, why are you yelling at him? Like, it wasn't a big deal. And I'm like, no, you need to respect your authority, you know, this and all. And the next thing you know, we're yelling at each other. Or let me rephrase. I wouldn't say that yelling isn't something that we do. We've raised our voice. Less than 5 times, as far as I can count, right? I have a bad memory, so maybe it's more. I'll see what Jamie's side of the story is. Drop in the comments.
Jamie. Yeah, down below.
She's like, 1 million.
She's like, I'll just send you the PDF file.
Yeah. She's like, I keep track.
It out.
Yeah.
Today's episode of Brave Men Dare is brought to you by Woolly.
You ever just put a shirt on and just been like, ugh, what the hell is on my body? Or the worst thing is you're like, it's chafy. A lot of those materials just have a lot of garbage, chemicals, and just trash and stuff like that. One of the most comfortable shirts that I've actually put on is this one that I'm wearing right now. It's wonderful. It's like being hugged by a kiss of wool. Can I get this in a polo?
Woolly uses merino wool in all of their clothes. And if you haven't ever tried merino wool, you really need to give it a shot. It's a natural fiber that actually is going to whisk moisture away from your body, which helps keep you cool and dry.
And if you're a guy on the move, there's nothing better than being cool and dry.
I've switched out all of my boxers. Now I'm only wearing Woolly.
There's a great joke in here about a woolly mammoth.
Right now, listeners of this podcast can save 15% on anything at Woolly. Head over to the link in our description and be sure to enter in promo code BRAVE to save that 15%.
Woolly, more wool, less plastic. But we really don't raise our voices. We don't really yell at each other and like that. And as soon as, and we both do this, we calm each other down super fast. It'll be one of those like, why are you yelling at me? Right? And you're like, all right, I'm probably getting a little heated about this.
That's a pattern interrupt.
It totally is, right? And because I love my wife, like I don't want to yell at her. Yeah. It's not my intention to raise my voice and I understand the change in inflection and all that, how that changes things, right? Like I can only imagine for my wife, who's not I'm a larger human being who, like, if I'm raised, like, there's some volume to it, and I've yelled at people, right? I spent 10 years of my life in the Marine Corps yelling at people. Like, I know how to yell at people. And, knife-handed.
Yeah, I grew up in a house where we were very loud.
Yeah.
3 boys, everybody in the house was very, very loud. So like when we get together and spend time together, it's loud.
Yeah.
We're talking over each other. It's very much like, and then I've got extended family that's very similar. And then it's a whole cacophony of just, people.
Cacophony.
That's a good word.
That's a
right?
good word.
Put that on your
check.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
cacophony.
I had to learn that it was like
cacophony.
Because Stephanie would be like, why are you yelling? Or like the kids would, and I'm like, I'm not yelling. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not upset.
Yeah.
And then it would be like, well, it sure sounds like you are.
Yeah.
And I had to really learn that.
And you're over here like, I'm not mad right now.
Exactly.
So we definitely like catch each other on that. And even that, she'll be like, why are you angry? Right. And I'm like, pattern interrupt. You're right. I'm not. My bad. I was just getting heated, She also tells, this is, I think, her new favorite thing is she's like, you're just being mean. And Jamie has, I think, come to a realization that like there's, I don't know how to share all that.
I know, right? Sometimes you gotta tell them.
I was like,
it's kind of what I did. I was like,
maybe, Greg and Daphne.
Hey, what's you got a Jenny and who over there? Like, what would be?
I can't use Jenny.
Okay, Stacy.
I think I could use a Stacy.
Right?
Stacy, Brian and Stacy.
There you go.
Brian and Stacy.
Yeah.
So Stacy, I'm gonna get yelled at for this. Stop yelling at me. There are certain things that like in our relationship that if this happens more often, I'm a much more pleasant person, and it's like, you're a lot nicer to me when this happens on a regular basis. And I'm like, I can't control that as much. And it's stupid, right? I am not intentionally pushing my emotions one way or the other based on other outside factors, right? I'm not looking at it going like, man, I haven't eaten in a couple hours. So like, that's not an intentional thing. I'm not like, man, I'm hungry, so I'm just going to be a real jerk.
Yeah.
Right. So there are certain things that, when those needs have been met and you're feeling satiated with those things, right? Then, hey, you're a nicer person. Like, yeah.
Well, there's a thing there. I mean, it's like biochemical, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like all the good feeling endorphins and oxytocin and all those different
really
things.
What it is.
It really is on some level, right? It just calms the nervous system to the point where you're just like, everything's much better now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that definitely, but Daphne and Stacy, we've heard that's not necessary. We have the ability to do that ourselves. I don't. We gotta back out of all of this
Listen,
conversation.
I don't know if you know this or not. I'm pretty good at it myself.
Oh my goodness.
This is good. This is off to a great start.
What was anger like for you growing up? How was it displayed? What did you learn? All those kind of things, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of, there was a lot more violence in anger and stuff like that. Especially like between my dad and my brother. I have an older brother. So there's a lot of like physical, like this is, I think we talked about this once. I was like 8 years old. My brother had gotten a DUI. He was 18, gets a DUI and gets like the family car impounded. My dad gets called from my mom, gets called at the bar from my mom, like, and I think this is what happened. I was 8, I'm guessing. Has to come home from the bar and is angry that this has ruined his evening, right? And he's got to deal with this now. He walks in and we have a bunk bed and my brother's on the top bunk. My dad jumps up on the bunk bed like he's standing on mine. He's got up on my brother. He's in his face and I'm pretty sure he's strangling him. He's like, motherfucker, right? Doing the Bart Simpson, Homer Simpson thing. And he's like, if you ever do this again, like I'm going to beat your ass, and just starts yelling at him and like wakes me up in the middle of the night. Like, what the fuck is going on? And then my dad gets off the bunk bed. He like jumps down. He takes like 3 steps. He's like, no, I'm going to do it now. And turns around and you hear my brother go, no, Daddy, no. And my dad grabs him and I mean, just rips him off the bed, across the wall, knocks a bookshelf and a fish tank down. I mean, like just is like, I'm going to use this human being as a rag doll now. And my mom like, come here. And I like snuck out the side of like, or the foot of the bunk bed and like watched all this happen. So that's just one of quite a few situations where like anger turned towards violence. Right. And I definitely saw that a lot as a kid and knew that wasn't like, hey, that's not healthy, and stuff like that.
Well, let's unpack it a little bit more. Like as a kid, right? I don't know if you necessarily had the thought. You're like, that's not a healthy way to deal with emotion.
No, yeah.
So, I mean, what would be like you see it? I'm sure you've got fear, you've got all those kind of different things. But like, how did you process that to the best of your recollection? And not necessarily that one individual incident, but just like in general, is it like that is behavior that isn't safe, doesn't feel good, is scary.
Yeah, it was definitely like, that's scary. And I don't think this is how this should be. Right. Like, I feel like this is wrong.
Okay.
So I definitely like, I don't know how I processed all that, but, I think that I remember being younger, watching these things happen and going like violent, like being angry and violent isn't the way to be. Right. Like, I believe that you should be able to control your physical self and not let your emotional self dictate what's going on physically, for the most part with you. So I knew that I didn't like that because I saw what that would do, right? I was like, man, like that's terrible. It's sad. It's there's a lot of fear and all this stuff. And so that was a big thing for me. It was hard too. Like it's so funny. My dad would go through these, like, I don't want to call them fits of rage per se, because it wasn't a regular thing. This was the 5 times maybe in my entire life that I saw him get physically like violent more with something or something. And it was like a bar fight, right? Like I watched him get into a fight with the motorcycle shop that he was in. I watched him beat the shit out of my brother once. It might only be 3 actually, like that I can think of. So not too much of that, but I remember they were big moments, right? Like this happened.
They definitely stood out. Huh?
Definitely stood out. But I also remember my dad, like as young as I can remember, he'd be like, yeah, we don't hit women. That's just a thing that we don't do. And I kind of was like, yeah, we don't hit women. Like no big deal, right? And I had younger sisters and I'd smack, like we'd fight all the time. And he'd yell at me for it. And I'd be like, yeah, whatever, And then I remember him and my mom got into a big fight And he was in the wrong, I've no doubt. He's walking down this hallway, and my mom is just beating the shit out of him. I mean, she's 5 foot tall, right? He's 6 something. She's throwing things at him off the wall. She's hitting him, kicking him, and all this stuff. He gets in the bedroom. He's like, just going to get his wallet. He's like, I'm fucking out. I'm leaving. Like, this is stupid. I'm not going to sit here for this. And she gets in his face, and he like just grabs her by the arms and picks her up and like just kind of like on the bed with you, and just like, you were in my way, on the bed with you, and just walks out. She gets up, motherfucker, right? All that, and they just left. And he was like, nope, just going to remove myself from the situation. And it's at the time I was like, why is he letting her do that to him, right? And as I grew up, I realized like, oh, well, he would have murdered her, right? If he would have he had giant hands, like just douche, like, oh shit. And so he just removed himself from the situation, so he didn't have to worry about that violence, and because he knew that wasn't what he wanted, or the way that I think about that. He's like, no, I'd rather just remove myself from the situation than the risk of it going to that next level, which I don't want to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And that definitely like stuck out to me, even in everything that was going on. This person that he is the closest to is all this emotion and all that. And he's like, nope, we're just going to remove ourselves from the situation right now. Like, I don't want this to escalate anymore. Maybe not the best way to handle things. Right. But that was the way that he was going through that. And it made me think about, as I grew up, how do we process this stuff, right? Like,
yeah, that's what I'm curious about. Is it's like you see all of these things as a child growing up, right? And it's like everything else, where what we're seeing and observing, we're absorbing, we're interpreting, we're also then reflecting outwards and displaying in some capacity, right? So how did you in turn handle anger and frustration and those big intense emotions as a kid growing up? What was the outlets for you? What did it manifest in you as a kid as you continually kind of were in that environment?
I listened to a lot of Marilyn Manson. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you from some of my stuff, because it's like I can connect a lot to my parents yelled a lot. When I say like a lot, I don't know on top of like being loud all the time, but then there were times when they would yell and fight, and they were very clearly in an argument. And my dad would slam doors. He would, do all of those kind of things as far as like some external, display of violence or anger, frustration. They had a dresser in their bedroom that he punched a hole in at one point. I didn't see when that happened, but it was like we knew that that's where that hole had come from. And so
holes just don't randomly show up in
right,
furniture.
It just doesn't magically appear. But all of that energy, all of that emotion, that pent up, a lot of it was like pent up anger. I think that would be a real easy way to kind of describe it. It's just like a lot of pent up anger in the house without a release for it. And so it manifested in me and my brothers just beating the shit out of each other all the time, constantly fighting on a regular basis, and then hitting and punching everything externally. So we put holes in, my bedroom door was just covered in holes, basically broke the bedroom door. It was so bad to the point where when we finally, like after my parents got divorced and my mom, I think she refinanced the house or something like that. So she was able to go through and like get new carpet and paint and do some different things, which included new bedroom doors. And
because your doors were so fucked up.
It was so fucked up, dude. It was a smorgasbord of
like Swiss cheese.
Yeah. Because what would happen is you'd get in an argument, I'd get in a fight with my brothers, and then you run to the bedroom and you go in, slam the door, sit down in front of it so that they can't get through.
Yeah.
And then you would just sit there on the other side, hitting, punching, doing everything to the door to try to get to them. And so the door was just completely smashed in on one side, like totally ruined. But we had it forever, right? It was not like we're not buying new doors in this house, right? And when it finally came time to get the doors, we took that door, and we were all teenagers at this point. I was probably like 16 or something like that. And my brothers held the door up, and I ran through it.
I was gonna say, yeah, I was like, you should have done it on the hinges. Still.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, that would have been cool. But then we got to fix the frame and everything like that. But
good point.
We have a picture of it.
Okay.
Somebody, I can't remember who it was. It was probably my aunt, because my aunt, my cousins and my aunt and uncle, everybody, they grew up next door to us.
Yeah.
So I've got a Polaroid picture of me going like through the door. It was a perfectly timed shot. I don't know how she managed to do it with a fucking Polaroid, right?
Yeah, it's just good.
But my brothers were holding the door up, one on each side, and I jumped through the door and crashed right through the center of it.
I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool
I mean,
memory.
it's cool, but the moral of the story is right. That's how we dealt with our anger in our house, was just beating the shit out of each other and all physical objects.
Yeah, I guess,
like there were so many holes in walls all over the house from being punched, and I put a massive crater in my closet that was the size of, I think we've told this on the podcast before too, but I got so angry and so frustrated. I used to like run and jump and then just fall. Like I would get so angry, I would run and jump up into the air and then just smash down onto the ground. And this one time I was so pissed off about something. I don't remember what it was. And I ran into my closet and happened to hit the spot between two studs.
Oh God!
And just
boom.
completely caved in the entire centerpiece of sheetrock. So it was like this it was the biggest fucking hole any of us had ever put in anything at that point.
You were like, ooh.
Yeah, I was like, I'm dead. I'm done.
Yeah.
This is it.
What's in the closet? Just keep that door shut.
That's totally what the
you put
plan
clothes
was
in
for
front
a
of it.
Yeah, it was like I tried to do that, and I'm like, it's too big. I'm screwed. And I had to tell Mom, and then it was like, well, Dad's coming home at some point.
Yeah.
And
So I put a big hole in this trailer we lived in. I put a hole in the wall next to my mom's bedroom door in our dining room. So you had to like go through the dining room to get into her bedroom. And I tried to do a backflip by like stepping on the wall and like flipping over.
Okay.
But it's like that, like,
were you trying to do the thing where you like run up the wall?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was trying to do that in a mobile home with like 1/4-inch drywall. And I put my foot and it poof right through it. I lied, and I told my mom I tripped over the vacuum cleaner and I hit my head because it was perfectly sized of my head.
Okay.
Right? But there's this hole right there, and we didn't have any way to fix it or anything like that. So we just we put one of those, like, the picture of like the cat having a bad hair day, right? Or I think it was a cat like on a rope that said like hang in there, right? And we just put a thumbtack and put it over the hole. And it was like that for years, right? It was just one of those like, yeah, we'll fix this one day. Like,
exactly,
what the fuck
man.
ever.
We've got some of those in this house right now.
There you go, right? That's great.
Don't go look behind these pictures.
Yeah.
They're hanging up.
Oh, it's like a treasure trove.
There was some in the house when we moved into this house. They had some of these pictures above the stove, and we're like, "Oh, that's cool. I wonder why they left those there." And then we went to replace them, move them, and we're like, "Oh, those are there for a reason."
Yeah, it's covering up the exposed
those might
wires.
be load-bearing pictures.
They're load bear. It's just glued to the wall. That picture's there. It's part of the house now.
Do you remember a lot of stuff like that of being so angry and having to have an outlet for it as a kid?
So I was thinking. I remember. I think. I don't necessarily know if these all align, but I was like, it was when I was a young teenager. I mean, literally, like at the age of like 12 or 13 is when I started working out.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I think we've talked about, like, my mom had just bought me a pair of dumbbells, and I would just sit there in my room at night and just pick them up and move them around. Like, I would, like, no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
No books. I think I had a couple men's health magazines, right? And I would just do bicep curls and just anything I could think of to do with these. And I would just do that for like an hour in my room, right? And then be like, all right. And then I was a gross kid. I'd just go to bed like sweaty and whatever, like that, whatever.
That's what kids do, man.
Yeah, they're gross. So I worked out a lot very young and continued on that for, the rest of my life up to this point. And I think I used that a lot as a kind of an outlet, like, hey, I'm going to like put this here. But I can't really remember anything else that I like did specifically to like do something with those thoughts and emotions. So I think it was just working out.
Did you not have outbursts? Did you not have,
I did like they would be like I would get angry. I'd be on the internet and my sister would pick up the phone and it would like disconnect me and I'd get mad and I'd throw something at her, or she'd yell at me, or like she'd push me and I'd push her down, or like we had stuff like that. Right. But I can't really I mean, I got in a lot of trouble doing just dumb things. Oh God, I got in trouble for smoking once, and my mom found a pack of like Newport 100s that like a girl I was hanging out with had stolen from her like aunt or something. And I'd only smoked like, I was like 14. I think I'd smoked like one or two of these cigarettes. My mom found a pack of them. And then she also found, my dad smoked a lot of weed, and I found a bunch of his seeds and just like the, what do you call that?
The shakes.
Shake. Yeah. And I was like, oh, so I started planting these seeds and I straight up had a weed plant growing in, and I just told my mom, I was like, I don't know, there's some seeds I found, So here I am growing this, I have, I have this like 1.5 foot tall, like marijuana plant. I'm like 14. My mom figures out what I'm growing. Plus she finds all these seeds that I got from my dad, right? From his shake. And she's like, and these cigarettes, and she made me sit at the kitchen counter and smoke those cigarettes. Just one after another.
I love it.
Oh God, That's got
like the classic
so
80s
sick.
parenting.
Oh yeah, it was 100% classic 80s. Yeah, it was 99. And I smoked. I think I smoked like half, and to the point that it made me sick.
Yeah.
Right. Like just got so sick because it's a super like menthol. Or oh God.
Yeah.
Didn't teach me anything. I continued to smoke after that, was because I'm dumb. But yeah, so I'd do like. I get in trouble for a lot of dumb things. I'd sneak out, I'd get caught, just like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really had any like outbursts. I tried some things like I think a lot of kids like, and we've talked about this, some like body like mutilation or whatever. Like,
the self-harm stuff.
Yeah, self-harm stuff. Like I remember like I cut myself with a knife once, and I was like, all right, and I did it, and I was like, that hurt.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I don't feel any better. And now I just have this cut on my arm. Like, this is stupid. I burned myself with a paper clip. Like, I tried to make like a bee with a paper clip and tried to like brand myself. And I was like, ow.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm not doing that anymore.
That's so interesting to me. Like, it's really fascinating to me sitting here listening to you. And I'm trying to understand, because you and I have so many similar things. Right. But this is an area where it was, because I went down that self-harm rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And it was like, that shit made me feel better.
Yeah.
Like it was a huge release for me to be able to channel all of my anger and rage in those moments of self-harm, whether it was like pushing the thumbtacks into my knuckles, slamming staples into my arms, all the burns. I've still got them all over my body and stuff like that. That was such a release for me. And it was something that really helped me in those moments. I mean, obviously not healthy, all those kind of things, right? But so I'm curious more of like, because I know that you've got anger.
Yeah.
Like I know that you've got, that emotion inside of you.
It's my dark passenger.
Yeah. And it's like, what happens throughout the course of your life, and not necessarily just childhood, but what are some examples of obviously what you want to share, right?
Yeah.
What are some examples of when that thing has come out?
That's super solid.
Has it ever?
I don't know. Like, I think that I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever feel like I need to like do something with this anger, right? I pretty like anytime I get upset, like I'm not really ever like upset for a very long time, because I just sit there and go like, yeah, like listen, all right, like what am I upset about? Like what am I going to do here? Like this and that. I mean, even as I go through like things at work and whatever, I'm like, well, that sucks, and then I get upset. I like, all right, and I work through it and all that.
Even when you were younger, like in the 20s and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, even then, I don't look back and think like. With the drinking, right? Or the drugs or whatever, right? Like I never did those things because I was angry at something, right? Like even when my ex-wife and I when she left, like I was super sad and like depressed about it, I drank because I didn't know what else to do. Right. Like that's what I was like, well, I'm just going to drink a bunch because I don't know what else to do right now. And that kind of made me feel better. Right. But even the times that I'm trying to remember that I've just been the most angry, I can't ever remember it lasting more than a couple hours of just pure anger. And I think I just go find something to do with my hands, right? I'll just be like, well, I'm just going to go do this, right? Like I'm going to go work on something, or I'll go do this, or I'll zone out or whatever. But I don't ever remember looking for something to be an outlet for my anger. And I would even say like today in jujitsu, like I love jujitsu, and I definitely feel it very therapeutic to have that like place and that way of self-expression. But I don't ever like get really angry or be upset or have this like feeling and like I'm just gonna go to jujitsu to like deal with this. Like I don't ever think of like I'd actually feel really bad if I did that. Like if I showed up in a really bad mood to jujitsu and just started going hard. I totally tried to break Donnie's foot the other day. Like he kicked me in the face and I was a little upset about it. And it was a split moment. What's Donnie? He's got to weigh 200 pounds.
Yeah, he's a big kid.
Right? He's 6 foot.
Yeah, he's
something.
also young.
He's young. He's like 19.
Yeah,
or
he's
something
also
like
like a white belt.
He's total white belt, total spaz. Who's athletic, right? Like he's not a weak individual. And he spun around and kicked me in the face, and I grabbed his foot and put him in a toe hold and just don't do that. And I totally his foot cracked. I just let go, and I was like, ah. And he was like, ah, and I was like, hey, don't do that. Like, and then I was like, sorry. Until I grabbed your foot and tried to break it because you pissed me off.
Yeah.
But like that was my anger, right? I got kicked in the face. I was unhappy about it. I tried to break this guy's foot real quick. I didn't. And I was like, hey, don't do that anymore.
If we were going to ask Jamie, because the gist that I'm getting from you is that you don't have a lot of, repressed anger or a lot of like, just a lot of repressed anger. Do you think that Jamie would agree with that statement?
I think that she would say that I probably have a lot of like repressed emotions and stuff like that. I don't know if anger would be the thing. I definitely like if I am angry, I yell, right? I raise my voice. I can say some meaner things. I don't ever say anything mean to Jamie because I don't want that. Like that's not. I've said some meaner things to the kids. And I really have Lincoln specifically, not really Nora, Lincoln, because I'm really in, however we want to get into that, but I get angry with him and so I raise my voice. I don't think that I have a lot of repressed anger. I don't believe that. I definitely some trauma, some traumatic events, things like that. But a lot of that doesn't ever really make me, like when those things come up, I'm not mad. I'm normally sad, right? They really make me sad. I think about, or they like, God, I do tend to get a little emotional. Like you'll see things like I get really prideful about things, right? Even the kickoff or for the national anthem and America the Great, like those songs at the Super Bowl, like that gets me like choked up a little bit, right? But I can't think that I don't think that Jamie, drop it in the comments. I don't think that I have any like seriously repressed anger that it's like we don't want like Ben to blow his top.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's a thing? Like, do you feel like if because I'm asking you a ton of questions.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
And I'm happy to answer all of these questions as well and kind of go down these rabbit holes myself as well. And I think it's important to do that.
Yeah.
But like that, like blow your top. Like I remember growing up where it was like we knew that my dad was angry. Like I said, you could feel the repressed anger in the house. You could feel the repressed emotion in the house. And it was like, at any given point, if we set him off with something or upset him with something, then the result was going to be, oh my God, we don't know what, right? It was like this ever looming fear about what would happen once he got upset or once something triggered him and pissed him off, right? And there's not a lot of examples of like what did happen when that happened. He didn't ever have these big, massive outbursts. There's a handful that I can remember and things like that. But just that ever looming fear of the repressed emotion, the repressed anger was something that was very, very palpable throughout my childhood that I also took on and embodied and carried out throughout my life, and also continued into my adulthood and with my children and with my home and my family and everything like that, where it was very much like, don't anybody upset dad, because if dad gets upset, we don't know what's going to happen, right? It's suddenly he's going to start yelling, he'll start slamming doors, and then who knows what's next.
Yeah. Today's episode is brought to you by Heritage Steel. Heritage Steel offers premium cookware made right here in the USA, and that's something that is very, very important for me, is that it is a US-made product. Not only is this product made here in the US, but it's a family-owned and Tennessee, produced item. You can use them any way you want. You can put them on your stove and cook, you can put them in the oven. They're gonna be great for all of that, and they're super easy to clean. And guess what? If you're listening to this right now and you're on the Brave Men Dare podcast, you get 10% off. Go to heritagesteel.us/brave and get you 10% off anything in the Heritage Steel inventory. Make sure you use promo code BRAVE when you're checking out, and that'll get you that 10% off anything in the Heritage Steel store. Heritage Steel, premium cookware for less.
Would you say that, like, if we fast forward into the future and Lincoln's sitting down on the equivalent of Brave Men Dare with somebody else, right? Do you think he would communicate something similar? And not only that, but do you also think that you two can feel that type of repressed energy, emotion, anger growing up from your dad?
Yeah. I would say, if I was going to categorically like place it, I would say that I can probably be quick to anger, but I'm quick to leave behind. Right. So it'll be a spike. Right. So it's not the idea that there's like, I don't think that the kids walk around the house, it doesn't seem like it, worried that I'm going to be upset about something. But I think that they definitely know, like, and everybody I think approaches these things differently. I can be a little more like, hey, like, what are you doing? Right. And then if it's like the next time, like, now I'm angry. Right. We talked about this, you know the role, you know the expectation, you're not doing that. I've already talked to you about this, like, it's a one strike and you're out in my world, right?
Okay.
Because there are certain, and around things that are expectations, right? It's expected that we don't throw things at our sister, right? I'm going to be upset with you because you know you shouldn't do that, but you did it anyways, right? Talking back to your mom, stuff like that, right? The other day, he looked at me and he was like, just said something, and I was like, who are you talking to? Right? And it was like, I yelled at him. It was getting ready for bedtime, and I don't remember what he said, but he stood there, planted his foot, and like, no. And I was like, who the hell are you talking to? And I yelled at him, and I mean, I was definitely like, in the like, the only reason you have a bed is because of me and your mother, right? The only reason you have a place is because of us.
Yeah.
And got into him because we bought him these alarm clocks that like have a light on them, and they've got a radio and the alarm and all this stuff, right? Well, 2-3 weeks ago, he was fucking around with it and he broke it. So now the display doesn't work. All right, the alarm still works and you can still listen to music on it from the radio, but the display doesn't work anymore. It's like, well, now you don't know what time it is. And then he ripped the antenna off and had somehow reset it so it wasn't on the right channel. It was just static. And he's like, well, you can go through and find it. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to sit here because you ruined this thing and try to find the station that we listen to at night just so we can, like, I'm not going through all this. Like, no, you just don't get music anymore. Like, you thought it was okay to take this thing that we bought you, destroy it after you know that that's not what we're going to do with this. So
is there any chance, and like, I don't want to get too lost in this because this isn't like unpacking, your relationship with Lincoln, but you talking about that reminds me of you telling stories about taking the toaster apart and putting it back together. Like, is there any part of him that is just curious about how this thing works and is, playing around with it? And Do you know what I mean? Is there a part that maybe that's what he's doing rather than like breaking it and destroying it?
I don't think so,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not a matter of he's trying to understand how this works. Like Nora has taken some things apart, right? And I can see that. I'm like, hey, if you take this apart, like it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
And now it's ruined, right? This was a straight up like, he doesn't care about it. Like that's what, it's just a lack of caring for things. And he just ruins them. Like literally tearing pages out of a book. He's not trying to figure out how the pages work, right? He's just destroying things. And I think part of this is where we run into is like, okay, you're trying to find your outlet and maybe the destruction is your outlet or whatever. The consequences are you no longer have that thing. And I'm not going to be the parent that's like, oh, it's okay, I'll just buy another one. Oh, it's okay, I'll buy another one. Because now there's no respect for the items that we have and the relationship between the work that we put forth to earn the money that we use to buy the things that we have is broken. Because to Lincoln, he's just like, this shit keeps showing up, right? Like water bottles, right? This is a sensitive subject in my household because Lincoln has probably gone through, he's in 3rd grade, 4th grade, he's probably gone through 20 water bottles. And it's just, he doesn't care. And it's like, cool, man, like I'm going to not buy you any more of these water bottles.
Do you think he doesn't care, or do you think it's just like straight up ADHD where he...
It's a little bit.
Where he does, because Asher does the same thing.
Totally.
We have bought in countless water bottles for this boy. And we used to buy like the good Nalgene bottles.
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
Like,
we don't buy that shit anymore.
We got to make sure that these are the good bottles. They're durable. You want to make sure you hold on to these bottles.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later,
it's gone.
He's like, where is it? Where's my water bottle? I don't remember. So now we're like, what's the cheapest water bottles that we can find? Because we're tired of replacing water bottles.
Yep.
And because it's the same thing where I've gotten so frustrated and I'm like, dude, you got to remember your fucking water bottles, right?
Yeah.
Like this is super important. And it's funny because like there's a part of me that zooms out and I'm like, I could give two shits about fucking water bottles.
Totally.
Right. I don't care if you break them, lose them. And it is also the part of it underneath it where it's like, hey, it's disrespectful. You're not caring about the exactly what you're talking about, like the time and the energy and the effort that Mom and I put in to provide this thing for you and all of these kind of different things. And what I've learned with him is it's not a lack of like disrespect. It's not a lack of like, fuck you guys. It's just simply his brain doesn't process things that way. And so he doesn't think about, he doesn't see it as something that he has to pay attention to.
Totally.
And it's not from a place of like any of those things. It's just literally his brain is preoccupied with other things. Mm-hmm. So it's out of sight, out of mind. And he does it with a lot of things. It's not just the stuff that we provide for him. Does he do it
with his car keys?
He does. He does it with a lot of different things because he's just operating at a different pace and not paying attention. And so what I've had to learn to do, well, first off, we're not buying expensive water bottles anymore,
totally,
right? Like, check
buy
that box.
Shit in bulk.
But it's also just like, rather
Fool me
than,
once.
And especially like at the age, because obviously they're very, Lincoln's nine, right? Asher's 18, so very, very different age. And now Asher just gets to solve all of these problems himself.
Yeah.
But it's also, I'm no longer in the game of like getting stressed and angry and upset and trying to teach him this lesson and teach him that lesson and all of those kind of things, because what I learned was it was just like, it's not even a matter of like falling on deaf ears. It's just simply his brain does not process that way. Like for me, I'll have the same water bottle my entire life.
Yep.
Like you talked about alarm clock. I have the same alarm clock that I had when I was like 12 years old. Mm-hmm. Kept that alarm clock. It still fucking works. I can plug it in. I don't use it anymore, but I've still got it, right? Yeah. Like I don't have I don't lose things. Yeah. Because that's the other end of the spectrum for my ADHD. I very much know where all of my things are.
My bubbles.
Exactly, right? And I just had to really start looking at him in such a different way rather than projecting my thought process of what he was doing based off of how I perceive his actions and his choices, instead of getting really curious about what's really happening and seeing it from a different perspective. Because what always would happen with me, Ben, was it was like my projection of what I thought he was doing was creating so much anger and frustration and tension inside of me and stress inside of me. And it was creating distance between him and I. And it was like, well, I don't want that distance.
Totally.
I want to move closer to my son. I don't want to create something that pushes him further away from me.
Yeah.
So I had to get really curious about this space in the middle where at the end of the day, like I said, I don't care about water bottles. You know, I can buy, you know, $210 water bottles. I'm fine. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, I just want him to, I want him to feel safe. I want him to feel loved. And yes, I want him to learn about respect and property and all of these kind of different things, but not at the expense of a connection with me, not at the expense of a relationship with me. And it felt like those bigger arching themes of like, you know, respect for things and hard work and all of those kind of things. I had instilled enough of that in different places and in different ways that like this little thing that was playing out in regards to the water bottle situation was 100% about me and what I was struggling with in that moment, and 0% about him losing or misplacing water bottles.
Yeah. I think, I mean, for me, a big part of this was like, I agree. He is totally just ADHD, just all over the place. Kid walks 10 feet, forgets what he's doing, right? Like 100%.
Yeah.
And I understand that, and I recognize it. I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. The consequences of losing your water bottle is you don't have a water bottle anymore. And I don't want to hear the complaints of like, well, I'm thirsty. I bet. You lost your water bottle. Like it's not this ever-ending tree or supply of water bottles, right? You can totally have the ADHD and all that. It doesn't matter where you're at in life. This is the consequence, right? If you're 30 and you lose your phone and you can't afford a new one, I'm not going to buy him a 30-year-old a phone. I'm going to look at him and be like, yeah, that sucks, stupid. You shouldn't have lost your phone, right? You should have more respect. Or if it is, hey, I've just ADHD, cool. Then you need to figure out how to operate as a human being to make sure that these things don't happen to you anymore. Because otherwise I feel like, and this is where my concern is that it's the water bottle today. I mean, like I watched this kid, we had an old iPad that I had for my gym. No need for it anymore. It was what they got to play with, whatever. It was on the floor in the truck, and he got up and he just walked on it. He stepped right on the screen, cracked it, and got out of the truck. And I was like, you just broke that. And he's like, oh. And I'm like, all right. And he used a broken tablet forever, and then we threw it away finally because he did something wrong. I was like, yep, that's it. No more. So as much as I am not trying to, as somebody who has ADHD and forgets things and loses things all the time, like,
have you ever talked to him about it?
Yeah.
Like talk to him about yours and how you manage yours and how you deal with yours?
I have talked to him, like we will be driving, and I was telling him sunglasses, right? Like I'm super upset. I had a really nice pair of sunglasses that I got from work. I wore them for 2 years, right? They were awesome. I love them. I kept them. I have the case still. I just threw the case away because I lost sunglasses.
Keep the box.
I had but I put them in the box. Like that's how I carried them around.
We hold on to our cell phone boxes.
I know the millennials. I don't do that anymore. They totally caught that meme and it was like, why do you have a stack of cell phone boxes?
I opened up my drawer after you said that on the episode, and I was like, there's the cell phone. There's the box for my earbuds.
Yeah.
Like that's important.
Yeah,
I definitely need to hold on to that. You never know when that's going to come in handy.
Listen, I have learned that is like, okay, yep. And I have moved on from that. I bought some AirPods in October because I had lost my case. So I went and bought a new set, and it was like, all right, cool. And I literally walked out of the Apple store, took them out of the box, and threw the box in the garbage. And I'm pretty sure somebody's like, what are you doing?
Some other guy in his 40s. He's like, hey, guy, whoa.
Hey,
there's
did you
information on that.
Yeah, right.
You need those right
What
there.
if you want to put it back in the box? But
the sunglasses.
I lost them in the, it was in August of this past year. I had them for 2 years. I got in the water. They came off in a wave and they were gone. And I was like, shit. And I bought a pair of 20. I even went out, I bought myself $100 pair of sunglasses. And I was like, all right, these are good sunglasses. I'm going to keep these. I lost those in a fucking week. And now I'm like, cool. I'm driving down the road. I'm like, God, it's bright. You fucking suck. And you don't get sunglasses anymore, stupid. Right? Because I lost them. And I've talked to Lincoln about this. And I've talked to him about like having water bottles and having things. And it's one of those, like, I think he's starting to get it with like, we take care of our stuff, but it's a long road. You know, he's getting better with it. I think as he's getting older, and it's a combination of maybe he's maturing as a child, so he's getting better with that. It could be all the consequences and things that have happened, right, from that, because they don't have tablets anymore, right? They don't have anything to do. Mm-hmm. They've pushed that button one too many times. So that's like, yeah, this is the consequences of what you had to deal with, and now you have to just deal with it. I think he's getting better about it, but I think that I don't know if that's from the conversations, the consequences, the punishments, or whatever, but he's getting better. He's had the same orange water bottle now for a hot minute.
Nice.
Right? I will say we totally have a box of Sky Zone water bottles from Nora's birthday. We went to had her birthday party at Sky Zone, and everybody got a water bottle. Uh-huh. But we thought, I mean, not as many people showed up as we thought. We totally understood. We went to Chattanooga, so it was an hour drive for a birthday party, right? Yeah. Plus 2 hours there. Like, that's a long day. But that's what she wanted, so we went there. So they gave us all the extra water bottles for the whole party size, because I think we said we might have up to 25 people, and like 4 people showed up. So we have 20 water bottles, and they're like, I was like, fuck that, give me those things. Like, they're shitty, cheap, plastic, clear, with just Sky Zone label. They're in our basement in a box. Here you go. And we have them if they need them. Like, yeah, you can get one of these things. But he's had the same orange water bottle now for a hot minute, and he's doing a lot better with it, right? Same as their lunch boxes. Like, he's gone through a couple dozen lunch boxes, right? And stuff like that. And now, like, he knows, like, if he takes a toy to school and he loses it, like, I don't care. That sucks. Yeah. Shouldn't have done that. Toys don't go to school.
Right.
You know? So whether my shame or conversations or anger, but I don't know. I don't know what it was, but he's getting better.
Starting to put some of those pieces together.
And I mean, that's really like, at the end of the day, the big thing that I'm trying to just instill in him is like, everything we do has a consequence.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, right? Hey, if you do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 air squats, and you do, 50 pull-ups a day, you get stronger. That's a consequence, right? That's what happens. You get stronger. If you try harder in this, you get better. If you take more shots in basketball, you get more baskets, right?
So do you ever think, or have you ever asked yourself, what can I learn from my kids?
No, they're dumb. No. No, I've never asked myself specifically, like, sat down, like, what can I learn from my kids?
Yeah.
I definitely think the things that I do learn from them is just going through parenting with them and trying to, like, recognize the things that they're doing and stuff like that. See what, they're doing.
I think because it's kind of, I mean, it's a callback to the beginning of the episode where we're talking about anger and how we're modeling the stuff that we see as kids, right? And so they're great little mirrors because they're literally just moving through life doing exactly what you and Jamie do.
Yep.
And they just do it in the same version, but just in a slightly different way because it's them. Mm-hmm. And that was one thing that really helped me in all of these like tension spots of frustration with all of my kids was getting really, really curious about what they were doing and how it was just simply learned behavior that they saw in the house that they grew up in, which was with me, right? Mm-hmm. And that process alone just was like this beautiful, awesome unfolding of awareness, because so many of the spots where I found myself really in contention with all of my kids at the various stages of, them growing up and everything like that were 100% things that either I do or did or that their mothers did. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes if it was the stuff that was most like like the spots that got me the most frustrated and then caused the most tension between like me and a child, one of my kids, were the things that I did. And then like the next level would be the stuff that they were mirroring from their mothers. And that alone was like this massive just aha moment over and over and over again, because it was literally just learning more and more and more about myself by watching what they were doing and learning what they were doing. And then it was like I had to take it even deeper and go into a different space with it, where, because they do just mirror everything that we do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally, it's monkey see, monkey do. That's how they learn, right?
Yep.
They're just growing up modeling all of our actions and behaviors, all of our words, all of our thoughts, all of our emotions, 100% of the time. And it helped me understand myself better. And I started to notice that it also affected, because that's the other thing that I really got stuck with was, you know, I thought I missed the boat so many times with my kids because I made so many mistakes when they were little, and I wish I would have been a different parent and everything like that. But I was still able to shift and change actions and behaviors and then see it modeled in them later on down the road, where it was like the tension point would disappear once I changed my actions and my behaviors. And then I would see them model those things, those changes that I would make. They would model that later on down the road. And I could see like the connection point back and forth, where it was like, oh, they finally got that lesson, even though I wasn't like actively teaching them a lesson. It was more about changing how I was behaving and what I was doing, because those little tension points had way more to do with me. And then the really, like I was saying, like the other really big thing that helped me was also recognizing them as complete soul autonomous people, that although they, you know, in a sense came from me and were a part of me, they also were completely individualistic people with own thoughts, experiences, emotions. And yeah, they might be mirroring my actions and my behaviors, because that's just what we do as, you know, humans. But seeing them as complete individual people and getting really curious about, rather than thinking about my kids as people that I had to, you know, keep safe, I had to teach, I had to raise, to create good humans, to go out into the world. I wanted to see them as individual people and get really curious about them and just learn about them. So then it's like, what can I learn about my kids and how they see the world and how they move through the world and what their experiences are? And really just like I would look at like a friend or somebody new that I met, was like, I want to learn more about them and just get really, really curious about them as individuals. And when I started making some of those shifts, I mean, all of my relationships with my kids got better. And I also felt like all of that stress and tension that I would have in the middle of these relationships, because I was failing as a father or frustrated by their actions and their choices, all of those kind of different things, a lot of that stress just dissipated and went away, which again, like back to the water bottle conversation, right? I wasn't creating distance anymore. It was creating connection. And I was, you know, making that gap smaller rather than making that gap wider. I don't know if any of that kind of resonates or.
I definitely, I can see, like with Lincoln, I can see his like ADHD, right? And how quickly he gets sucked into a screen, right? Like if the TV's on, getting that kid to do something, it doesn't matter if it's his show or anything. It could be a commercial. It's just got his attention, right? So it's, seeing him get so pulled into it really helped open my eyes for what that must have been like for me as a child. And like, hey man, so I try to like have these, like, I know that you want to watch this, right? That's not what we're doing right now. You can you can watch this, but you need to get these things done first. So try to like have, I see that, recognize it in myself as well. And then try to work with him on like, hey man, you know, like they've got their morning routines that they go through, and there's like, Jamie and I are trying to like, hey man, you got to move faster. Like you can't take 15 minutes to pick out socks. You're just wasting time. Like you're making everything else slow down. And now we're at the end, we're pushing for time and it's harder. Whereas like yesterday morning, he got all his stuff done, had like 30 minutes to go. And Jamie was like, hey, if you want, you can go play. And I was like, isn't that nicer? Like, you can just go play now versus, you know, us yelling at you because you're taking 10 minutes to pick out socks. And he's like, yeah. And then I'm sure, you know, it'll continue to go through. He'll be like, 10 minutes to pick out socks again. Like, what are you doing? You know, I think it's fun to see what they're doing. And if you can recognize it, how can I help him understand that? Right? Like right now we're talking to Lincoln about how he tells stories. Because he loves to tell stories. But that kid don't know a period if it smacked him in the face. It's all commas. Right? And you're like, all right. This happened the other day. Jamie was like,
hold on, dude.
Okay.
Hold on, dude. Do you see the connection and correlation?
Yeah. Totally.
I wonder where he learned how to tell stories.
Yeah, he likes to tell stories. I get that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think he could be a phenomenal. He's going to always tell stories, and I want him to be a good storyteller.
So let him tell stories.
Yeah. We're trying to help him understand, like, I don't want him to, like, the same as, so my grandparents, like, as I was growing up, they would listen to the story, and they were like, all right, cool. And then I would get feedback on how to tell the story.
Okay.
Right? So that's what we're trying to help with, right?
Okay.
Like JV, it was so funny. JV asked him, like, she's like, well, what was the movie about? And he went through the whole, like, and then SpongeBob did this, and then they said this, and then this. And she was like, cool. Next time, when somebody asks you the opening question, what was the movie about? I was like, what was the main problem? And he's like, they were trying to do this. Cool. The movie was about SpongeBob and his friends trying to do this. Okay. I was like, and if mom wanted to know more, she would say, well, what happened? And then you could give a little more, right? So we're trying to like help him with some of that stuff. And he's like, all right, but yeah, this kid will just, and then, and you're like,
yeah,
it's hard. But
yeah.
I talk. I'm a storyteller.
Yeah. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing too, is I feel like we're talking about Lincoln right now, and I feel like we're talking about this relationship that you have with your son right now, because it keeps coming up a lot. Like it's in your space.
It's
like
it's a lot right now.
Yeah. You've talked about it a lot on a couple of episodes. It's like it's definitely in your space right now.
Yeah.
And I know you well enough now, but I also just know that like that thing inside dads that is just like, you love your kids so fucking much.
Yeah.
And you want their life to be easy. You want them to be safe. You want them to be loved. You want all of these things for them, because we're looking back at our life and how difficult our life was and how hard things were for us. And we want to save them from those experiences so that they have an easier go of it. We want them to be able to navigate life in such a way where they don't have to go through some of the things that we've had to go through. So I know that all of these things that you're doing and all of this love that you're trying to pour out onto this little boy, that's what it is. Like, that's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Like, I get that 100%. And I think it's so beautiful. And it's also just like it's the same thing where I think sometimes, because I've had many, many people over the years help me in so many different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we get so close to something, and there's nothing that we're closer to than these relationships with the ones that we love, right?
Mm-hmm.
The relationships with our partners, the relationship with our kids. We're so close to those relationships and so close to those experiences and those interactions that we're too close.
Mm-hmm.
We get so enmeshed in it that we can't see the forest from the trees, right?
Yeah.
Where you've got to zoom out sometimes and take a look at it and see, and it's like, how beautiful of it would it be? Like, this is a little experiment for you, okay? Because this is stuff that I've had to do with Asher, where it was like I would see things that he was doing, and it was like all the effort that I would put in to try to help him not do those things anymore because I'm seeing the path down the road that I'm trying to help him avoid, right? And what I would do is, rather than go through the process of trying to impart this wisdom to him with my words, I just started modeling the things that I wanted him to do. So I stopped trying to think about it from the perspective of I have to teach him this with, hey, bud, this is why we don't do this thing, and explain it in this way. And like, next time do it this way, and all of that type of stuff. When I stopped doing that and I just started modeling the things that I wanted him to not just be, right, but rather like those things where it's like, if we do it this way, this is the result. Rather than teach him that way, I just would embody what I wanted him to do.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of an example that kind of can put a little bit of context to it. But it was stuff around like for example, being able to emotionally express, being able to talk about feelings, being able to say, this is what's coming up for me and this is how I'm feeling. Like, that's a massively important thing, right? Emotional maturity. And I was seeing so many ways that he was shutting down and closing off, and all the ways that I was trying to get him to talk more and to express more and tell me more about what he was feeling. And all the things that I was doing to try to cultivate that and create that didn't seem like they were working. It was just creating more space between him and I, more tension, more frustration. And at the same time, I could tell that he wasn't, he had shit inside that needed to get out. And so what I did was, it's not like suddenly I just started like pouring all of my problems on my son and being like talking about everything, right? It's like, Mijo, you need to sit down. I've got a lot to talk to you about.
It's like, Jesus, Dad, like, leave me alone.
But there's always these moments where I would catch, it's like you can smell it. It's like you get a breeze in the wind where you can like feel space open up. And suddenly you're like just in a moment. And I would ask him like how his day went. And then he would respond with just the standard, like, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then I would just start talking about my day. And I would explain to him what I did and how I felt. And I would keep it in the space of like I said, I'm not doing deep processing work and talking about deep emotional things, but I went a layer deeper than just standard like pleasantries that we exchange with people. I would talk to him about some fears that had come up or some frustrations that I was experiencing. And then I would just let it be. I wouldn't be like, well, that's the lesson for the day, son, right? I would just continue to do that over and over and over again in the moments and in the spaces and the times where it felt like it was appropriate. And eventually he started fucking talking, dude. Eventually it would be like, next time one of those moments happened where the space would open up, because it's literally like you can feel it. You're like, something shifted here and now we're connected. And he would start talking. And then all I did, I just like get all fucking excited and he would do it with Steph sometimes.
Yeah.
And then it would like afterwards would be like, did you see what he just fucking did? Like, we can't believe it. So it was like, by shifting up my behavior, my actions, and just modeling the things that I really wanted for him, he would start doing it and displaying it. So like for example, with storytelling, right? Lincoln tells stories the way that you tell stories. And you have the intellectual understanding of it as an adult on storytelling and the importance of engaging with people. But when you're comfortable and when you're in like, when you're just in your comfortable space, you tell stories like Lincoln tells stories. Yeah. And so if that's something that you want him to learn, just start telling stories that way. And let him observe it, let him watch it, let him see it. And don't worry about the lesson that we have to teach about this, that, and the other. Just start modeling that. And I almost guarantee, like 100% guarantee.
Almost.
Like, I guarantee it. Like, I would bet money on this. It's not suddenly like next week.
No. Yeah.
It's not, it's like in the not too distant future, you'll see him tell you a story
And it'll be similar.
And it will be very much in
Yeah.
the art and the fashion of what you want him to be doing, what you want him to model. And all you have to do is change how you do things, which at the end of the day, it's all we can fucking do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the really big lesson I learned. It's like, I can't make my kids do anything.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, I can make them do anything.
Yeah.
But that's not how I want to parent.
No,
That's not how I want to cultivate a relationship with them. And so the only thing that I could do was change how I was doing things. And then I just was using that as the guide. It's like, okay, I get to those spots where I find tension and frustration, and I'm trying to impart this wisdom and got to teach them this thing because it's coming from a place of love and I really want them to live a happy, full life. The only way that I found the fix for me was changing how I was doing things. And then just wait and be patient, and just sure enough, it starts to happen.
I'm totally going to do that. I'm going to start focusing on like how I tell him stories and stuff. I'm also going to have him come in and watch me take a shit so he can watch me wipe my ass and flush the toilet, so he'll figure that part out. Because it's a struggle, right? Did you flush the toilet? I think so.
Right?
Why don't you go check? Yeah.
I don't know if I would advise that one.
Come on, kid.
Right? Get in here right now. You're going to watch Dad take a shit. So men do it.
So men do it. You don't get up till your foot falls asleep.
Yeah, it's like, it has been really beautiful to experience and watch, because like the place that Asher's at today is, I mean, he surprises me constantly with the level of emotional maturity that he's able to demonstrate. And it's funny too, because I've got the ego part of me that's like, man, I'm killing it as a fucking dad, right? And I also have to remind myself, that's when I get caught up in my own shit again, right? And then I've got to remember, wait a minute, like he's his own autonomous person that's, learning. He's got a whole life that's separate from us.
Yeah.
He's got a whole, and Lincoln's the same way. Like, that's the thing, is he's at this phase of life right now, which is a super normal, natural phase of any child. And it's super important. And it's God dang it, there's a fancy fucking word for it. Differentiation.
Okay.
That might not be it, but he's differentiating between you guys.
Yeah.
He's separating from you guys.
Yeah.
He's pushing away and he's doing this thing. It's just healthy. It's what happens. And then as parents, we're like, get the fuck over here. You're not you got to do. And he's like, no, like he's trying to differentiate from you guys to become his own autonomous person. But it's scary and it's hard and he doesn't know how to do it. And so it's this clunkiness of frustration and tension, and him standing up to you and being like, no, this is what's, all of it's so normal and it's so healthy. And like, that's the thing that we want all of our kids to do, is be able to be their own person and to stand in their own power and to be able to move through life with that confidence and all of those things. And I'm always, Steph and I talk about this all the time, and we wish that we would have had awareness much earlier on in our parenting journey, but it's like, the way that we think about it is we've got this really beautiful container that our kids get to exist in, where they get to experience some of the hardships of what life has that are really difficult, hard things, but they don't have to learn them like on the outside of that container by themselves, right? Like life's got a lot of really hard lessons that people have to learn, and they get the opportunity to learn those within this beautiful container of the safety of our home and our love and everything like that, even when they don't feel like that's the case. And they might not, right? I don't know, I'm definitely projecting, but it's like they get the opportunity to learn some of those life lessons where they have a soft place to fall, even when they don't want it, right? Even when they don't feel like it's there. And I think that's really, really important, because not everybody gets that. Like, there's a lot of kids out there that are trying to figure stuff out on their own without, support and without help and without a safe place. But at the same time, like, there's a part of that differentiation, and I don't think that's the right word, but we're fucking going with it.
Go with it.
That because he's only going to push more. Yeah. Like, you guys are like, as soon as testosterone kicks in, dude.
I know.
It's going to be a real fun experience for everybody.
Fun. Is that the word that we're going to use? Fun? It's gonna be
Well,
real...
that's the thing is it's like if you start preparing for that,
Yeah.
not out of a space of fear, but out of a space of like, how beautiful of an opportunity is it for you to model things for him, because he's going to go into this next phase where things start getting real crazy for him.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember what testosterone did. You remember what puberty did. Like it's bananas town.
It is bananas
for
town.
like about a decade.
Yeah.
And then it's like he's still within the scope of that safe boundary of your guys' love and your house and your comfort and your support. But he gets to be crazy because that's what happens when puberty happens, right? I mean, it's fucking crazy town.
Yeah. It'll be fun.
It'll be really fun. I'm really excited.
I'm glad. Thank you so much for all of your support in this. I'm going to be like, what the fuck? You're like, right? Isn't this fun? And I'm like, no, I'm not having fun right now.
Yeah.
He wrecked my car. And you'd be like, yep. He's learning. I'm like, he's going to learn. He's going to learn today.
Yeah, they're the funnest, man.
Yeah.
Parenting is it's been the biggest gift for me in so many different ways. And it just keeps on giving. Like it's one of the things, because all of our daughters are,
older.
I had a really beautiful conversation with one of my daughters yesterday. She just transitioned jobs, and it came with a bunch of different emotions and a bunch of different processing and everything like that. And like being able to just hear her experience and listen to her and all these kind of different things. And it's the same thing where even as adults, all of my adult children, I mean, they're all adults now, technically, right? And it's so hard to hear them talk about things at times, because I want to tell them like, well, here's the thing, look out for this thing. Here's the fix for that thing. You know, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Make sure you do this thing. Like I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
But
I don't think you, because you want to try to like instill, you're like, I've gone through this.
Exactly. That's all it is. It comes from love.
And you're like, I want to help you. So this is easier. As you said earlier, this is easier for you. Hey, let me give you the secret to this.
Right.
Right. And they're like, listen, boomer.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, I don't know. You don't actually even know what you're talking about. And you're like, no, I do. Which then creates this like, you know, and then they're like, you know, as 20-year-olds in their 20s, they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then, because you see these things like when your kids are 30, they're like, you know, they might know a little bit about a little something here and there, right? Yeah. And then, you know, now I'm like, hey, can I ask you some questions? Like, I'm thinking about, like, what are your thoughts? Like, do you have any experience in any of this? Like, how would you go about this?
Yeah.
Right? It's definitely trying to find things for, like with me and Lincoln, especially like trying to help him along with some of that stuff, but at the same time giving him the room to do it on his own, to like figure it out. Like I love building Legos with him, right? But at the same time, it's building Legos can be really hard because there's normally only one person building Legos. So it's like, cool, I can sit here and do all this, right? And he can watch me. But at his age, I'm like, no, you do it. So now he'll build stuff, and then he'll come and be like, hey, I'm at a spot. Like, it's just, and I'm like, all right, well, let's look at this together. Oh, toodles, right? And we'll like sit down and we'll pull it apart and look at it like, all right, cool. Hey, you see this? Remember, we got to count like the number of blocks we put. And he's like, oh, okay. And then sometimes like, I mean, he actually got one the other day. He was putting together this car that he got for Christmas, and he's like, yeah, this isn't lining up. And I sat down, I looked at it, I was like, yeah, something's wrong. Like, I don't know where the mistake is on this, and I tried to figure it out. And I was like, but I'm real sorry. I was like, I don't know. I was like, you have to pull this apart more. Like, I just gave you 35 minutes of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and he was like, all right. And he struggled with it for a minute. And then like, it was like 2-3 days later, he's like, I figured it out. And I'm like, awesome. What was it? And he showed me. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't even like see that. And he like, cool. And now it's all like together. I was like, great job, dude. Like,
right.
So we got to go through this like thing together. But like even some of the small stuff, the first couple of like bigger Lego sets you like just opened all the bags. It's like, ooh, so check it out. I recommend just open the one bag, because you're just going to lose all this stuff. He's like, oh, I was like, hey, keep all your Legos in one spot. You know, that way you know where they are. Trying to go through some of those things with him.
See, and then like here's me because I'm
I
like,
know.
look at your shop,
Yeah, I know. My garage is a total wreck.
right? I
It's
mean,
a
he's
total-
doing everything that you've taught him to do.
I know.
He's literally just showing you exactly what
I
he's
do.
learned from you.
Yeah, he would walk in. If anybody walk in the garage, it's a total
Right?
wreck right now.
You got to keep all your tools in, specific spots, Ben.
I
You got to
know.
keep them in spaces so that you don't lose them and
I
you can
know.
remember where everything's
I
at.
literally actually was debating on going to buy a tool cart.
Okay.
That is just another place that because that's my biggest problem is it's a combination of like just short on time. It feels like, so like I'll grab, okay, here's the 17 hand tools I need. I go do the thing that I'm working on. And then I'm like, I don't have the time now. Cause I had to get that done before we went to do this. So I just take all the tools and they just get set here. Or there, and they're somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Or like, oh, I need that. So I'll go get the one tool and then it gets set over here. Right. So I've always got this problem. So my thought was, well, I'll get a tool cart, a cart that moves around. And that way I'll bring the cart over there. I'll do it all and I'll put it all right back. And then the cart comes with me. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I was like, I'm just going to have a tool cart full of fucking tools. And then I'll just take them off the tool cart and go send them somewhere else. I was like, the tool cart's not the answer. I need to build better systems and processes. And it was literally, it's funny that you would bring up the tool thing because I totally was like I'm going to go have this conversation with my boss and, maybe I'll have some free time to clean up my garage. And I was like, well, maybe that'll be what I do constructively with this time is I'll completely clean my entire garage and organize everything.
Yeah. You know what I look at it now? Because a lot of this stuff, like the tools are a funny thing where it's the exact same thing. I've got tools all over the place. And I got myself a tool bag.
Yeah.
For that reason, right?
Yeah.
And now I can put my tools in my tool bag and then I've got them and I need them and I get my tool bag out. And of course that didn't work. But because there's tools in the garage, there's tools in the tool bag. I can't.
What about the tools that don't fit in the tool bag?
I got a tape measure over here on the table somewhere.
Dude,
It's
I have
like,
tape measures all over the place.
Yeah. But what I've learned for myself is the process of that to me is me accepting who I am rather than feeling like that's something that I'm doing wrong or that there's something that needs to be fixed in that situation.
Yeah.
Now, like I had to fix our cabinet in our bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And the process for that was a shit show because I got different tools here and I'm setting tools over here and I've got these screws and it's this, that, and the other. And it's a simple fix. It's like, it's something that should take me 5 minutes to fix, right? But instead it takes me 25, 30 minutes because
you got
I'm back
30,
and forth and going here and going there. And in the past, I would look at that situation and get all frustrated at myself and all angry at myself. And then it'd be like, I need to do this thing. And eventually I'm going to get to the point where I don't have time to do this thing and I got to organize this thing. And all of that narrative, all of that stuff, I let go of all of that and I just let the process be whatever it is. And I don't have the inner voice anymore that's like, well, you know what I really should be doing? It's like, no, this is what I'm doing. This is how I do things.
Yep.
This is my magic. This is the way that I move through life. And I think it's beautiful. And I think about that all the way back into like childhood and how I grew up and all those kind of different things where if nobody had ever come in and been like, this is the way that you should be doing things, or this is the way that things are the best way to do things or whatever, then I wouldn't have that part of my brain that would judge and criticize my actions and behaviors. I would just see it as, this is the way that I do things. I spread stuff all over. This room's a great example where, do you know what I mean? It's full of shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, where's that one thing that I've got? Well, it's in that cupboard over there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I know it's in
So
there.
you're like, let me lay on the ground here. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it used to be, man, I really got to organize this and I got to get that table squared away, all of those kind of things. And I'm like, no, that's how I am.
Yeah.
That's how I do things. That's how I live. And it allowed me so much, like, it alleviated all of that stress and chaos inside of my brain of inner voice and judgment and criticism because I wasn't doing things the right way, or I was doing things in a stupid way, or I should be doing things better. And it just eliminated all of that. And now I just have so much more space and freedom to just do the things that I want to do and be how I am. And I don't have to worry about all of that other stuff because that's somebody else's way of doing things.
Yeah.
Like that's somebody else's story, right? That was placed upon me. Somebody else at some point along the way said, you know what? It would really be nice if you did things this way, because that would make them comfortable. Or it was an act of love where
Yeah.
somebody was like, your life would be easier if you did things this way. I had the same fucking thing with Asher where we were working on the car and doing things, and he's very much the same way. It's like watching him work on the car causes so much anxiety for me because there's tools everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to lose them. We're going to misplace them. And rather
That
than
one's going to get left in there.
Exactly. Right. Rather than going through that process of like being all stressed out and frustrated and trying to talk to him about the importance of, and 95% of the tools are mine, right? Like all of those kind of different things.
Yeah. You're like, yep, don't
I'm
lose
just
that.
like, yeah, that's how he does things.
Yeah.
And he literally, like, I can't even remember how he verbalized it, but he said something along the lines of like he acknowledged that that's how his brain worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, dude. Like, I love how our brains, like everybody's brain works differently.
Yeah.
And he saw that like, that's how he does things. And it was just a moment of like, yeah, isn't that cool? Like, I like the way you do things. I do things this way. This is how I do things. And this is how my brain works. And it was just one of those moments. But
I wish my shop was cleaner because I
love your shop,
dude. It's good and bad because the problem is I have like 20 different things going on. So I have 20 and they're in 40 different places.
Yeah, but it's how you live life.
It is. I am we have a chaotic schedule. We live a pretty chaotic life, I think, for some people. At the same time, I totally am also the person who'll be like, all right, like we're going to fix this, right? And then I'll just sit down and be like, cool, what am I doing this weekend? I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go to my garage and I'm going to get things organized, right? It is like getting to a point now because like before I started the cross cart, I was like, all right, I got things like squared away, put away, like organized. And I was like, cool, I'm going to start this project. Everything's square. Well, now this project's been going on for over a year. I haven't touched it in 6 months. I'm like, fuck, I got to finish this thing, right? I'm a little upset that I'm not done. We're going to get this squared away. And then I was like, all right, well, and then I started looking, I'm like, well, it's hard for me to even to get back into this because so many other little projects happened in between. Like my welder is in a garbage bag right now because I had to take it somewhere to fix something and it was raining. And I was like, well, and Jamie's car was in the shop. So, I mean, like all these things, right? And I'm like, all right, I need to go through this. I need to clean all this so then I can get recentered and focused on this project to get it done. Because right now I'm tripping over other things that I've set down to just try to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
You know, and I do like that's the hard part for me. And I appreciate really, really good organization. I am not really, really good at organizing things. And like I love, like this is so stupid. One of the things, like this is when I will know that as a man, I have made, like when my shop is relatively complete, is when I have a really good parts bin, which means that if I need a 1/4x20 bolt that's 2 inches long, 2 washers in the nut, I can walk over, open a drawer, grab that nut out and the 2 washers and the bolt that are in the same thing and they're all organized.
Yes.
Like when that happens, I'm like, that's a good looking
You've
shop.
made it.
I've made it, right? Yeah. And like the 1/4 inch all the way up to 1/2 inch, like in all the different sizes. Maybe the different grades, right?
My first wife, her grandfather, it was really cool because I got to experience a little bit of him before he passed away. And he had a shop that was beautiful. It was like immaculate.
Yeah.
And like he had all the pegboards and he had the jars and, you know, everything had a place. And he had literally, you'd pull out the drawer and all the wrenches were lined up and he had stenciled around the, like, you know, so you knew exactly which wrench, the whole shop was set up that way. And I was just like, this is the most amazing thing in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah,
that's the ideal.
That's the ideal. I can't wait to get there. Right. And it's a process. It's a process, right? Slowly getting better at it here and there. And part of this is also like I am shoehorning all the stuff I have into this space, because it's my shop. It's also where we keep stuff, right? It's also my office. It's also where I reload stuff. Like, so I've got all these different things going on, which is one of the reasons why I like one day I can't wait to build my own shop, right? So I'm like, all right, here's like, this is the metal fabrication area. Here's where the woodworking stuff goes. These are different rooms.
It's such a good example. Like, it's such a good metaphor for your life, though, right? Where you've got so much going on.
Yeah.
It's the space where everything's taking place, and you've got this over here, and you got this over here, and we got like dry food storage here, and we got welders over here, and we got all of these different, stuff going on. And I think, because that's the other thing, is like that old man's shop that I was talking, like, obviously he's retired. Like, he's not raising kids. He's not working full time. Like,
what's his job?
To go out and organize his shop, right? He's got the time to be like, I'm going to take the time to stencil out. It's like, those things have a time and a place, I think. And I've thought a lot about that too, where it's like all these things that not shame might be too strong of a word, but that I criticize and judge, that inner voice that's like, man, I'm really fucking this up and I need to do better at this, that, and the other. And it's like, it's just not time for that yet.
Yeah.
There will come a time where that might happen. There will come a time where that thing takes place. And that's how I see a lot of things, where it's like, I've got this long list of to-dos, and it's like, I used to feel the weight of that to-do list. And now it's just like, oh, that didn't happen yet because it wasn't time.
Yeah.
And when that happens is when that was supposed to be fixed. I fixed our, that fucking...
How long was that cabinet broken?
The cabinet's been broken for a while.
Yeah.
And every time I go in there and I look at it, I'm like, motherfucking
I gotta fix this
cabinet.
thing.
Right? And then it's like, no, like, when it's time, I'll fix it. And I came home from jiu-jitsu the other day on Saturday, and it was like, turns out it's time to fix this cabinet.
Fix that
Steph's
right
like, you going to do that right now? And I'm like, it's time.
Yeah.
It's time to fix this right now. So...
Yeah, it's and I mean, and part of me is like, I hope it's actually like, I've been thinking about the shop more, and I haven't talked to Lincoln about this. I really want to get my cross cart done, because I want to build one for him, and I want that to be like our first father-son project. And it's hard because, like, I think there's things that you can do, right? But like, he's 9, he's about to be 10. Like, hey, man, you want to learn how to weld, right? Like, we're going to learn how to do that stuff now, right? And I would love for him and I to, like, hey, as a family, we built this thing, right?
Yeah.
As a father-son, because my hope would be, and I don't want to push him into it, right? I don't want him to do something he doesn't want to do, but he likes go-karts. And I'm like, hey, man, do you want to build a cross cart, your cross cart with, like, let's do this together? And if he's like, yes, I want to do this. And if he enjoys that process, then it's like, sweet. Hey, when he's 12, do you want to start talking about what kind of car you want, right?
Yeah.
Do you want an old Bronco? And I would love to find something old that we could restore together or put together or whatever. And that could be the project that we do, right? And then showing him that here's how you fix things and here's how you work on things and stuff like that. Like, I would love to get through that with him, because I did that with my dad. Now, I also have to be open to the space of, he may not be into that.
Yeah, might not be his jam.
Maybe it's Nora. Maybe Nora is like, hey, I want to learn how to weld. I'm like, sweet, I'll teach you how to weld, right? He's just the older one, and he is my son. So, like, I think, as much as I would totally support Nora being like, I want to build a cross cart, and if she's like, hey, can we go in the garage and work on this right now? I'd be like, hell yeah, baby girl, let's go do this, right? Like, I'm all about that. He's my son, right? And it's that, I think that's that difference there, right? But I really want to, but I got to finish my cross cart. So, yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll have some free time coming up, and
you never know,
right? You'll never know.
Never know what the universe has got in store for you.
Right. Well, I'll know in a little bit. By the time you hear this, it'll be a thing.
Yeah, it's been an interesting few weeks for Ben, right?
Yeah, right. Lots of
few months.
Well, and it goes back to, and I totally get this. Like, between Jamie and myself, like, we tend to live in chaos.
Yeah.
Right. We have so much going on, and it's always like, I think that, like, we have a wedding next month. Like, and my cousin Josh is getting married, and I think it's in March. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But that'll be something I'm like, the week before, Jim's like, hey, next weekend we're going to this wedding. I'm like, oh yeah, we got to do that. Right.
Is there, I know that it's, because I look at that, the living a life like that, life full of a lot of things and chaos and things like that. Do you think that there's any part of you that is emblematic of how you've always lived life and how life, so it's just norm, it's just comfortable?
If there's nothing going on, like I'm like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like I love chaos, like that's just,
it's hard to slow down.
It's hard to slow down. And I feel like, and I feel like there's an analogy for any way you want to live life, but a body in motion tends to stay in motion. I know that if I get up and I start working on stuff, like I spend less time scrolling the internet. If like yesterday, I got done working. I was like, sweet, like, hey, these boxes need to get out. Like, so we started just taking care of stuff, right? And like, hey, okay, cool. And because we live we work a lot, we're on the road a lot, we a lot of sports and activities. Any little time I can find to put something in there is going to be one of those projects, the cabinet or whatever, like that gets done. Like it took the kids like an hour to take all the boxes out because we burn all of our boxes, right? So because we have a ton of boxes. So I know that project goes through. And even some of that, I mean, it could be, there are projects I have that I've bought things for the last like 6 months. It's just sitting in a box. There's like, I've got them all. I'm like, sweet, I'm going to work on that one of these days and build that thing.
Yeah.
When I get there, when
it's time.
So but I don't like to just sit there and do nothing. I like to be busy. So
yeah,
it gives me some place to put all my energy.
I get it.
So
I get it. I like to slow down.
Right. That's that's our yin and yang.
Well, I used to, I mean, life was very chaotic for us.
Yeah.
And there's a part of it that definitely came in conjunction with kids growing up and moving out and everything like that, where the majority of stuff that we were being busy with centered around kids and pickups and drop off and going here and doing this and all those kind of different things. So that shifts and changes, but it's also a conscious choice that Stephanie and I have made to simplify things and to slow down life and redirect all of that energy in different ways, in different things. And so, I think it's a part of it that's just, when it's time, it's time. Like I'm sure you and Jamie will get to a point where it's we got to slow down. We got to shift things up. Because it's like running at that speed, it's like at some point Goggins is going to slow down, right? He might not think he will, but I'm sure at some point.
Well, he's so busy carrying the boats, which is just silly.
At some point he's going to carry all of them and they're all going to be
I've carried
there,
all the boats.
Right? There's no more boats to carry. You'll slow down. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's the thing too, is it's like, I don't know what to do with that energy. Well, that's the cool part is you still have capacity. Like I live a very slow life. I don't do a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
We're doing jujitsu a couple days a week. Pickleball's going great on Monday nights.
Pickleball.
It's fucking going great. I'm feeling strong. But I'm not filling up my calendar with a lot of stuff because I like to be able to be really present in the things that I'm doing. And so I'm really focused on the things that I'm doing. And I'm looking for more creative things to do and use my energy in that way, but not in the space of like, I got to be doing stuff. I got to be here. I got to be there. I can't live like that anymore. It was just, it was so destructive to my nervous system, so destructive to all sorts of different things. And I can't do it.
Yeah.
So
I get that. And it's hard because I feel like, it was destructive to my nervous system. Sitting there for me with like that feels destructive.
Yeah.
Right. And so I tend to like need those like things to go on. We definitely talk about like, hey, we're going to slow down. Like, when the kids are older and they're out of the house, what are we going to do? Right. When will we retire? Stuff like that. What would we do when we're retired? And even then I was like, we could do this and this and this and this and this.
Right?
And Jamie's like, yeah, and she's like, we could just hang out and slow down too. I was like, yeah, totally. But while we're slowed down. And I think, some of it can be, even my mom and stepdad, like they're both retired. And like I talked to them and like I think they've got a good balance of like they stay busy, but they also, my mom would be like, well, I've got this to do and this to do and this to do and this to do. It's all self-imposed.
Mm-hmm.
She's canning and making bread and building or grinding flours and all this stuff. She's chose to do all that. And if it's like a shitty day and it's raining, she's like, yeah, I think I'm just going to sit on the couch and I think we're just going to hang out all day.
Yeah.
Just kind of relax. She's like, we went to bed at 5 o'clock. You
Yeah.
know, she's like, because why the fuck not? I was like, yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
So
that's how we're living life.
yeah.
It's like 8 o'clock rolls around and we're like, well, we finished Ted Lasso,
Oh,
which we could do an entire episode. We're not going to get into Ted Lasso right
It's a
now.
good ending.
There's a lot of lessons that I got from Ted Lasso, a lot
good.
of things that were really impactful for me. It was a beautiful series. I was really grateful for it. And we're not watching anything right now. And it's like, 8 o'clock, let's go to bed. Like we're
you
done.
haven't started shrinking yet?
Not yet. We gave ourselves, because Lasso was important. I wanted to give it time to just absorb into my
process.
body, right? I didn't want to just jump into something else.
I get that. I'll let that. I'll let that
You
abide.
let that slide for
Yeah,
now?
let that slide.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. I just shrinking is just such a good show.
That's what we hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody that tells us about it. So we're excited. It's definitely the next one on our list. But yeah, dude. I think we should wrap. Let's wrap up. This has been great.
This has been
This has
good.
been a great episode.
I like
I'm
it.
very excited.
The anger after. I don't even know what we'll talk about. But
Right?
It was good.
It was good.
It was great.
Go subscribe to Brave Men Dare. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us anytime. You can email us at bravemendare@gmail.com. Also, just send us a message on any of the social media platforms. Share the podcast with somebody. And if you dig it and you want to support the show, we've got sponsors that you can go pick up some stuff. Heritage Still and Woolly. If you buy some of those things and use those promo codes BRAVE, then we get a little cut and it helps keep the lights on in some sense of the word. So thank you, everybody.
Literally the lights on.
There's a lot of lights in this room.
There's a lot of lights in this
There's
room.
about 15 different lights right now in this
Right.
room that are all being paid by sponsors. Hey, if you've got a light company and you want to sponsor the podcast.
That's really what you should find, like some of the LED
Right?
like light companies and be like, hey,
Yeah. We've got Sony cameras behind the scenes here. Sony, if you want to sponsor
right?
the
That'd
podcast.
be, yeah, we actually I need some cameras.
But we'll see everybody on the next one.
Later,
I love
guys.
you, dude. It's been great.
This has been great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Brave Men Dare. If you haven't yet, take a moment and subscribe to our channel, click that little notification bell, and check out some of these other clips. Last but not least, we'd really appreciate it if you sent this podcast to somebody else. Share it with a friend, share it with a buddy, and don't hesitate to reach out. The conversations that we have on the podcast are meant to inspire you, but also we want to hear what it brings up for you. Whether you share it in the comment, send us an email, or call us up. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next episode.